Good evening. We've got a few more folks that are kind of making their way in. I want to welcome all of you to Laurel Hill if you haven't been here before. My name is Pastor John Bright. I have the privilege and honor of leading the folks here. And we're trying this. We've never done anything like this before. And our hope was to get many different kinds of folks in here. The many different kinds of folks that we were hoping to get were folks like us and folks not like us. Because if you're at this church, we're followers of Jesus. We were hoping to get, some folks maybe from some other churches, but also folks that haven't made that decision to follow Jesus. Folks who are following someone else. I don't know who. I'm not going to name all these different options. I'm just saying. But anxiety is one of those things. It doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care how old you are. It doesn't care anything, whether you're rich, poor, nothing. It just seems to be a problem for so many folks today. So what we wanted to do was offer some practical help. That when you leave here, you would have some practical help. Tonight, we've got a couple of folks from Richmond Natural Medicine. I can read it right on the screen. Dr. Chelsea and Dr. Leah are here. And so they're going to have a chance to speak, and then you're going to have a chance to ask them questions. So there'll be a little Q&A time within. Then I've got a little bit of...
So lovely. Thank you for inviting us to come. I'm Dr. Leah Hollon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Chelsea Barranco. So great meeting you all, and thank you all for coming.
Yeah. I think what you said earlier is that anxiety happens in so many ways, right? It could be what we call about worrying. I remember my grandmother had a worry stone. And I think as a kid, you don't really recognize what that means. But obviously, there was a lot of, I think, even in my own family, a lot of anxiety. And as a child, I had a lot of anxiety, but I didn't know how to verbalize it. I think a lot of children have that. And then as adults, you move into that, and it's still sort of there. So we really wanted to kind of bring some of the things that might be really useful. If you're a nerd, we're going to put a lot of the nerdy stuff at the beginning and sprinkled out, and we'll also have some slides at the end if you really want to nerd out. We have all the references, but if you want to just sit back and coast and feel relaxed, this is for you as well. We want it to be really accessible. We also will have at the very end like a QR code. You can take a picture of it, and it will give you the actual presentation if you want to have it electronic, because we can lose things. But we also do have some PowerPoint presentation slides that are out there that are going to be exactly on this. So it's about 30 slides total. So anyway, that's some housekeeping. So we'll go ahead and get started if that sounds okay. So one of the things that I like to share with people is I want them to understand their body. I think many times when we're feeling anxious or stressed or we've got a lot of pressures on us, the body doesn't know the difference between a bear coming after us, or a deadline, or a grandchild, or a child that's fallen down. It doesn't know the difference between that. The body just sees stress as stress. So we have this really cool hormone called cortisol. Have you guys ever heard of cortisol before? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So morning, so between 6 and 8 a.m., you're going to have like this big peak. And as the day goes on, it's going to kind of like wane down a little bit around 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and then kind of taper off so that we can sleep at night. But sometimes people have a really hard time with sleep, and it's because their cortisol is really high at the nighttime, and we want them to be able to sleep. So they think that they're running from a bear, and that can happen after trauma sometimes. The other thing that can happen with cortisol is sometimes after something like PTSD, which is a whole different animal. We really want to have that beautiful curve. So if we look here on the left-hand side, you're going to see a normal versus a burnout cortisol level. And so those little, if you can see it, those little green dots represent that cortisol that I was talking to you about. Like, we want to have it as a normal curve each day. But if you look on the right side, and I kind of described this already, that wired kind of thing, like up here, and we've all probably felt this way at some time in our life. Maybe we got into a car accident and we felt something, or we've been with someone and they're really way, like, wow, like, I wish they felt not so stressed. Like, you can feel someone's stress, right? So they're way up here. But then you can have something called wired and tired. And again, that's where I was talking about, where sometimes it's like, you can't really sleep and you just have kind of the thoughts are going, but you're so tired, but you can't actually sleep. So that kind of gives you an example of what can happen physiologically for us with having anxiety. So do you think that person at night, if they're like having all those thoughts, their cortisol is pretty high, right? Make sense? Okay, cool. Any questions about that? Okay. Well, this is one of my favorite slides because it really comes down to brain waves. And so we could talk about all the science all day long, but brainwaves is really where it's at. And I think this is one of the coolest things. So we have these brainwaves called beta brainwaves, and we have alpha brainwaves, and then we also have like theta, and we also have delta. Well, really what we want to know about is beta and alpha brainwaves. So I'm going to cut this really clearly, really simple. Beta brainwaves is when you're busy mind. I guess you could sometimes, if you're really in what's called, when you think about like looping thoughts and you can't let something go and like you're really stressed, those are beta brainwaves. And then there's alpha. Alpha brainwaves are more like when you're almost trying to go to sleep. You're more relaxed, you're taking things in. So there's that high beta brainwaves. There's actually medium beta brainwaves, and then there's low beta brainwaves, and that's what you're doing right now. Like, listening is low beta brainwaves. Like, you're awake, you're taking it in. If you're in beta brainwaves, predominantly most of the time of the day, your body doesn't know how to heal. We've got to switch you into alpha brainwaves, and I'm going to teach you guys how to do that today, which is pretty cool. So there's lots of ways that we can do that. I'll just really quick, I'll throw out a few. So prayer is one. Singing is another. Sleeping. Meditation, if you've heard of that before. Even earthing and grounding. We'll get into that later on, but we can switch our brainwaves and breathing time in alpha. Okay, so I'm going to turn over to Dr. Chelsea.
Okay, so what physical symptoms can occur with anxiety? And there's quite a lot of them. So that can look like GI discomfort, so that could be abdominal pain, that could be a combination of nausea, indigestion, that could also be irregular bowel movements, so diarrhea as well, poor sleep, high blood pressure, also high cholesterol. This can also be related to poor healing and slow healing. We can see rashes, hives, even allergies or worsening of allergies. This can also look like hair loss, irregular menstrual cycles, generalized pain, as well as memory concerns, rapid heartbeat and sweating, even frequent infections or never even getting sick, and then also headaches. Now, there's different presentations of anxiety. Now, when we think of anxiety, we also think of fears, those racing thoughts that Dr. Leah was talking about, worries, sense of restlessness, so a lot of moving around, panic, insomnia, nightmares, even lacking in trusting ourselves as well as others, social anxiety or performance anxiety, feeling frozen, this sense of overwhelm, as well as eating dysregulation, phobias, a sense of indecisiveness or even impulsivity, as well as pacing. So again, kind of going back to that restlessness as well as even vigorous exercise. So why can there be so many different symptoms of anxiety? As we just saw, there's quite a lot of them. Now, this image here is of the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, the parasympathetic nervous system, I want us to think of rest and digest. So this is what really helps with decreasing our heart rate, slowing down our breathing, really helping us to recover from stress. Now, let's look at here. Now, the brain and the spinal cord, that's kind of the start of where our nerves are. So I want you to think of this as this really calming network of wires in our body system. So as you can see, all the wires are connected to different parts of our organs. And so they all work together to bring us back down from a state of stress to a state of relaxation. Now, this is a bit more of an intricate image, and this is looking at our nervous system as well as how the vagus nerve and the gut microbiome work together. Now, the vagus nerve, that's the one you can kind of see in the center there. So I want us to think of that as, in a sense, this connecting highway between our brain and our gut microbiome. Now, within our gut microbiome, we have this enteric nervous system that's actually also considered our second brain. Now, our gut microbiome plays a huge role here. It's responsible for also producing chemicals such as serotonin, so really also helping to regulate our mood. So the big takeaway from this is basically when there's an imbalance of the gut microbiome, that can also lead to anxiety, depression, and even mood swings. So why can anxiety occur? Now, there's a lot of reasons here. So changes in our brain chemicals, so thinking of like dopamine, norepinephrine. Histamines could also be related to that. I just spoke about the microbiome. So the microbiome makes 90% of our serotonin, so again, regulating our mood. Infections as well, so pandas, as well as mold chemical exposures in the environment. We also see nutritional deficiencies, so that could be iron or even in excess. So magnesium as well, protein, different vitamins. Fluid intake, so thinking of like caffeine, alcohol, sodas, water, trauma as well. And this can also be familial, so genetic, learned, as well as epigenetic. This could also be hormonal, so thyroid, more related to hyperthyroidism, so an overactive thyroid. Our adrenals, estrogen, progesterone imbalances, and cortisol that Dr. Leah showed us in the beginning. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Leah.
Okay, so I think hopefully you have a good sense of at least some of the science. Again, understanding our bodies, I think that's one of the most important things in medicine that we find is that so many people come to us and they're like, I feel like I don't understand my body, or no one's explained it to me. And we really want people, we believe as doctor, as teacher, not doctor as dictator. That's not our thing. We like to really teach people how to take care of themselves. And so where do we start from this? So now that we understand, we can maybe talk about some basics. And I think one of the big ones is we have to go back to our humanity. It sounds so simple, but it's so true. I think in our world, it's so busy right now. We forget to stop and breathe. We forget about community. We forget to ask for help. So in here, you'll see here about breathing. We forget how important breathing is. If you stop breathing, everything is kind of like a real problem, right? We have some people, they hold their breath, and what does that do? It affects the brain chemicals that Dr. Chelsea was talking about. So really helping us to remember to breathe. If we can take more pauses throughout the day, that really can help with the anxiety as well. Eating, you wouldn't believe how many people come to us sometimes and they've read something online or TikTok, Facebook, whatever, Instagram, and they're like, I was told to do this diet and I'm not eating for 17 hours a day. And I'm like, well, if you're already running from a bear, your body thinks it's now running from a second bear because you're not getting enough fuel. And so what can be one person's medicine could be another person's poison, right? And so including food. So we want to make sure that people are getting adequate nutrition and that they're eating in a very like relaxed state. I've had a number of students and also patients where I'm like, okay, so tell me about your eating habits. And they're like, oh, yeah, I eat in the car. I'm like, no, that's not what we're going to do. Or, hey, oh, yeah, I eat while I'm standing up. And I'm like, I really need you to sit down because you're not going to be able to really feel like you're in that relaxed state that Dr. Chelsea talked about for our microbiome to make those healthy brain chemicals if we're not in a relaxed state to eat. So sleeping, right? And then having community. I'm so glad that you have one another. There's so many people who don't have people. The fact that you come together as a community is so very important. So great job. And then, of course, getting into nature. One of our favorite things is that I think all of us have had loss at one point in our life or a hard time. And you get out into nature and the birds are still singing. The sun's still coming up, right? And it's a reminder that it's going to be okay. And so we really like to get our people into nature. And then gratitude. I mean, there's so many studies on gratitude. It's amazing. You know, just even in your house, you could have a little gratitude jar. And you just rip off a piece of paper and write down what you're grateful for that day, or you might with your devotionals or whatever you're doing that day in the morning, of all the things that you're grateful for. But it really does build significant resilience. This is what we see in the research. And what I want to point out, too, is by thought alone. You've probably heard of white coat hypertension before. Have you ever heard of that before? Maybe some of you have that. But you think about it, it's like you're going to the doctor, and they're going to take your blood pressure, and you're like, oh, my goodness. You know, and people get really scared about having their blood pressure taken. And just by thought alone, your blood pressure goes up. Huh. So what would happen by thought alone if we could heal, right? Like you go into the doctor's office that next time and you've done your breathing, you've known what to do, and they walk in, they're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe this. Your blood pressure is the best I've ever seen. You're like, yeah, I've been practicing, right? So just by thought alone, to remind you that gratitude, every time we put in something that we're grateful for, it is changing our brain chemicals. It is literally changing them in a moment. It's amazing. Okay, and then establishing a care team that sees you and believes in you. There are many times we have people come into us and they're like, I just feel like my doctor's not listening to me, or they only have 7 minutes, and sometimes it's not their fault, right? Most of the time it's not. They're under the insurance model, many of them, and they only have 7 to 15 minutes. That's really hard to get to know a person. That's not fair for them, to be honest. And so, really have a care team that really sees you and really has a vested interest in you. And getting labs, right? You know, sometimes when we think about anxiety, there is something chemically going on, like Dr. Chelsea said, like maybe the hormones are off, and if we can get the thyroid in a better level, you'll do a lot better, or maybe the cortisol's off, and that can also be tested. One of the other things is we want to really look at the root cause of someone's anxiety. So sometimes we have people come in and they've had a severe trauma, and it would be similar to like PTSD. We also see a lot of veterans. And so their cause for maybe anxiety is very different than maybe a child who, had a parent who passed away earlier in their life, or even just ongoing chronic deadlines, or maybe as a caregiver, right? So we have to kind of go to that root cause of why the anxiety. Is it temporary, or has this been a chronic thing that the body has learned? And then lastly, just having ownership in the process. We want you to feel like whoever you're working with in your healthcare team is that you really have the ownership to really say what's important to you and to really be able to guide the ship, because you are the master of your own body, right? So like you should be in charge and at least have a say. So we love for people to get into nature. One of the biggest things that they've done in research is first morning light has a lot of great effects on our hormones if it happens to be that anxiety is coming from hormonal dysregulation. And so have any of you heard of forest bathing before? I know, it's kind of a weird term. Basically, it's like getting into nature and some of the deep woods, and where you basically are in a very different state than on pavement. They're trying to get you, and they can actually see in research that it's really helping with the mood, and that there are these negative ions that are released from the earth, and that has a big effect on our heart and also on our brain, so pretty amazing. And gardening. So I don't know if you've seen some of the studies about gardening, getting your fingers and hands dirty, that actually those microbes have an effect on our brain chemistry, which is pretty amazing too. So if you are a gardener, any gardeners in here? Great job, guys. Keep up the good work. All right, so journaling is another one, and I also talked about gratitude. You know, sometimes people are afraid to share what's really going on for them, and so journaling is a wonderful way to help folks deal with anxiety. And then art and creativity. One of the biggest things is when you're doing art and creativity or you're out in nature, you're going towards those alpha brainwaves a little bit. You're pushing away those beta brainwaves, those busy kind of bad brainwaves. Now, also sound and music. So, of course, you guys have a choir, and I saw your choir room over here. And so music is a huge part of really helping with anxiety, too. Gregorian chant has some of the best research, and so does orchestra music. So that's, if you're looking for something to help with anxiety, those are the ones that are most researched. So also aromatherapy. What's cool about aromatherapy is it gets straight into the limbic brain. You know, a lot of things that you have to take are maybe a pill. Well, when you smell something, it immediately goes to the center part of your brain, and it can change things immediately. So for some people who they can't take certain medications, this can be very helpful. Also, it's really great for children too when they're having anxiety. Earthing and grounding. So has anybody heard of earthing or grounding before? Okay, yeah, great. So it's basically trying to get your body in contact with the earth. It goes back to some of the forest bathing, but you know, this world is here for a reason, and there's a lot of healing in nature. We talk about it all the time, but when you are actually, you know, you can go barefoot, that's one form of grounding, but you can lay down on the ground if you so choose. Some folks, they may need a little bug spray, but if that's something you want to do, my husband is one of those that somehow he attracts every mosquito. But you can put a little blanket down, or you can actually put a little towel down, and really you want to have your body in contact with the earth as much as possible. The research that's so beneficial is 20 to 40 minutes. So the first time you do it, about 40 minutes, and it really resets the heart. It's called, we'll talk about this in just a little bit at the bottom, called heart rate variability. Anybody heard of heart rate variability before? A little bit, yeah. So here's the take home on heart rate variability. What they're doing is they're measuring your heart rate and how variable it is, and can it go back to a baseline, or is it having a really hard time to adjust? And so you want to be able to have some variability because you want to have this resilience of your heart. Well, for some people, as they lose that resilience of their heart, we see more and more health issues build up. So if you can actually do earthing and grounding, it actually helps with the heart rate variability, and so does sound and music and those kinds of things that we talked about. So anything that has an asterisk by it helps with heart rate variability. So we also have something called hydrotherapy. Heard of hydrotherapy? Done a cold pack before, a hot pack, any heat, right? So hydrotherapy is really the old docs in Europe and also in other parts of Asia, they would do what's called contrast hydrotherapy. And you've probably heard of the whole cold plunge thing that people are doing, right? Well, this has been around for quite some time, but it can help with the heart rate variability and help with anxiety. So in Europe, a part of their counseling also has hydrotherapy suites and cryotherapy suites where they go in and get hydrotherapy. Even Charles Darwin, that was the most important thing that he could do. He actually was very, very sick, and that was the only thing that he could do that would help him with his pain. Pretty amazing. So EFT is the next thing that Dr. Barranco is going to help us with.
Yeah, I'll explain it a little first. Okay, has anyone heard about EFT before? No, that's okay. So EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. So this is one of my favorite nervous system regulation techniques, and it helps to bring back us into that parasympathetic nervous system, so what I spoke about earlier. So basically the idea is you're using acupressure. So you're tapping on all these different points, acupressure points on the body that promote relaxation. So as we're tapping along, we're also identifying and acknowledging that concern. So in a way, we're helping the body to identify what's going on, as well as helping the body to release that and let that go. So what I'm going to do really quick is I'm going to do a quick demonstration of what EFT looks like, and you can follow along if you like, or you can just watch. All right. Okay, so the first point is kind of here, is the karate chop, and you gently just start tapping along. And so as we're tapping along, we can say some things. For example, we can say, even though I am feeling anxious today, I accept myself. Even though today has been a challenging day, I accept myself. Okay, and then we're going to move on to the top of our head here. Yeah, it's a little silly, right? Even though I'm feeling anxious today, I love and accept myself. Okay, now we're going to move to the center of our eyebrow. Doesn't matter which side. And we're just going to tap along the center of our eyebrow here. Even though I'm feeling anxious today, I love and accept myself. Now we're going to move to the end of our eyebrow. Even though I am anxious today, I love and accept myself. Right under the eye, I'm going to move my glasses, look here. Right under the eye here. Even though I am anxious today, I accept and love myself. We're going to go under the nose. Even though I am anxious today, I love and accept myself. Now, under our lips here, in that little divot right above our chin. Even though I'm feeling anxious today, I love and accept myself. Now moving to our collarbone, gently tapping. Even though I feel anxious today, I love and accept myself. Now last point is a hand below our armpit. We're just going to tap along. Even though I am feeling anxious today, I love and accept myself. And that is EFT tapping. Great job, you guys did it. All right.
We also, on the link, if you at the end want to do the QR code, we actually have a link to some tapping. And you may find in some people, if you go to YouTube, there's different types of folks who do EFT tapping. One of the people who's pretty well known is Gary Craig. He does a fair amount of them, but we put a couple different ones on there if you just wanted to refresh. And they may go in a different order, but the whole point is you're connecting to yourself, right? And you're hitting those points that reset that nervous system. Okay, and so then there's also meditation and mindfulness that can really help for people too, related to that heart rate variability. And the last is breath work. And I know we're going to do a little exercise also. And I know you're also doing some breath work. So there's all kinds of breath work out there that helps to calm the nervous system. Again, moving away from those beta brain waves into more the alpha. So I am going to do one called 5-2-5 breathing. Now there's 4-4-4-4 breathing, which is like more of the box breathing. But I have found for some of my people, everybody's different. So if you feel like there's one that works better for you, that's totally fine. Do what works best. But I'm going to introduce this one, which is 5-2-5 breathing. So you're going to basically, I'll walk you through it real quick. You're basically going to breathe in for 5 counts slowly through your nose, if you can. If you can't do it through your nose, it's all right. You can do it through your mouth as well. And then you're going to hold for 2 counts, and then you're going to exhale for 5 counts. All right? So we're going to do that together. And it's best if you do it with your eyes closed, but I'll just tell you, one time I was having to drive through a hurricane. And it was definitely, I could only see about maybe 10 or 12 feet in front of me. And so I did it with my eyes open. And halfway through, I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so tired. I feel like I'm going to fall asleep. I was like, okay, I'm not going to do my 5-2-5 breathing anymore. It had calmed me down so much. So all right. So go ahead and close your eyes if you don't mind. And just take a moment to settle in. All right. Now I'm going to have you inhale slowly, 5 counts. Hold for 2. Exhale 5. Inhale 5. Hold for 2. Exhale 5. Inhale 5. Hold for 2. Exhale 5. Inhale 5. Hold for 2. Exhale 5. Last one. Inhale 5. Hold for 2. Exhale 5. How you doing? Did you notice the difference? You did it. You just switched yourself from beta brainwaves into alpha brainwaves. Congratulations. Great job. It's beautiful you have something that you can take with you. It's your breath, right? You can take it anywhere you go. So I love using this with kids too. So if I have a whole family and they're having some issues, I use this on folks. Even my father-in-law just recently was in the hospital, and he has 2 compression fractures, and he's in a lot of pain. And I did this with him, and he said, oh, I'm so glad. He talked to my husband last night. I'm so glad Leah showed me that 5-2-5 breathing. It was really sweet. He said it really helps with my pain. So if people are in pain, that might be another option as well. Okay, so more targeted support. What can we do? Well, nutrition is a great way to start, right? We talked about eating, making sure that people are getting that. So if we think about the cortisol pattern again that we looked at the beginning, we actually need to eat according to our cortisol. So we don't want to be fasting too long for people, but we don't want to be eating all the time. But if somebody has an irregular cortisol pattern, we want to have them eat breakfast. We want them to have a snack. We definitely want them to have like some lunch and then also another snack. So that's not maybe everything you hear sometimes, but if we have someone who's had abnormal cortisol levels and it's being more specific for them, this is something we might consider. So each person's different. So as I talked about fasting and non-fasting, for some people it's maybe medicine for them, and others it's actually a poison for them because of it. So we really want to make sure that your lifestyle matches whatever you're eating to be able to keep up. So the microbiome, as Dr. Chelsea was talking about earlier, is our flora can actually release brain chemicals that can make us anxious or can make us feel pleasant and more like calm. So we found in the research that if we eat 30 different plants a week, it helps the microbiome. Now that can count as tea. That can also count as spices in our food. Also vegetables, fruit. So if you made like a fruit salad and you have 4 different things in there, that counts as 4 of your plants for the whole week of 30. Now, one of the things that people forget about is caffeine metabolism. So out of all of us here, probably about 1/3 of us metabolize caffeine quickly, 1/3 of us metabolize it normal, and 1/3 of us, it takes us a long time to metabolize caffeine. And that can definitely affect our cortisol pattern. So sometimes we have to alter that. So it is dependent upon our genes. It's pretty interesting to think about. Lastly is that diet should be personalized and not sensationalized. And we see that all the time, like these extreme diets. And how long do they stay around? Maybe a couple years. And then, it was like the low fat for a long time. Well, we need fat. So here's the nutrition and mood. So there's, we think about protein. We want to make sure we're getting adequate protein because that makes our brain chemicals. So making sure that that's coming in. We also want to make sure we're getting healthy fats because that also helps to make our brain chemicals. Carbohydrates as well. It's a very quick fuel for our brain. So sometimes we have a specialized diet for some people. Some people have probably heard of keto and that kind of thing. But we really do want to make sure that we're getting appropriate nutrients in order to make those brain chemicals. And then making sure that we also get vitamins and also when we think about our minerals, so like magnesium that we were talking about earlier. So again, the Western diet is not the best, right? These additives and preservatives that are in our food. not a great thing. And even some of the false sugars can really affect not just the microbiome, but also the brain chemicals that are made. So really trying to get more of a clean diet and not having all those chemicals in it. That's one of our most important things, and we talked about those sugars and false sugars. So I don't expect you to learn this. This is, if you are a nerd and you want to nerd out, this is your slide. But basically, all the things that are in green are all the nutrients that we need in order just to make energy. So if you wanted to go into this, again, at the end we'll have a QR code, so if you want to look at this in more detail on your own screen at home, that's totally fine. But in here you'll see magnesium and B vitamins that are required in order to make energy. And then also here, this is vitamins and nutrients that are needed in order to mobilize our energy through something called the electron transport chain. I like to think of it like a catalytic converter in a car. But even just if you look at the yellow dashes on there, that's like vitamin E. We have to have vitamin E in order to be able to do this. And we have to have a fair amount of like selenium and B vitamins. So we want to make sure we're getting those nutrients in our diet as well. And to make our brain chemicals, things like when we think about norepinephrine, epinephrine, and dopamine, we have to also have a lot of other types of nutrients like a lot of B vitamins, and even iron. This is why it's so important. So a lot of people, if they're anemic and they don't have enough iron, they may have a really hard time sleeping, and they may have a really hard time with basically having enough energy. So just things for us to keep in mind. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Chelsea.
Okay, so moving right along to our favorite modality as naturopathic doctors. So what are some herbs that we can use to address anxiety? Now, we have a few herbs here listed. We have what they're indicated for, some clinical pearls, but I'm going to choose about 3 of my top favorite ones and talk you through those. So the first one there I really love to use is called passion flower. Has anyone ever heard about passion flower before? Mm-hmm. Great, yes, so some of you had. So passion flower is very much indicated for anxiety, is indicated for seizures, insomnia. So I love to recommend this to my patients when you kind of have that, you can't shut off your mind at night. Think passion flower. It's also very indicated for ADHD, as well as tics and OCD. Now, some clinical pearl, interestingly enough, also tied to some breast cancer research as well. So the next one I love to recommend is chamomile, and I'm sure a lot of us have heard of that one before, right? Yeah, so chamomile, that one I love because it works on the GI system. So again, going back to what I shared in regard to our microbiome, so stabilizing our microbiome and helping with mood regulation. Also helpful for sleep, calming down the nervous system, and sense of irritability, also spasms. So chamomile is a great one to just a sense of spasms as well. Now, let's see here. The next one I love is lemon balm. Have we heard of lemon balm before? Yes, lemon balm's a great one too. So also indicated for anxiety, also great for headaches, spasms. It also works on the thyroid. So again, that was one of our other ones where, you know, when the thyroid is off, that can be a contributor to anxiety. So it helps with balancing the thyroid gland. And lemon balm is also really good for when we get that nervous stomach, so that IBS picture as well. Okay, so this is kind of where we're seeing some of the research showing the benefits of these herbs. The one I didn't talk about on the other slide, and I'm going to point out here, it's toward the very bottom, is stinging nettles. Have you heard of stinging nettles? Yes, that's a great one too. So stinging nettles, not only is it helpful for anxiety, so it's also an antihistamine. So going back to that, the first few slides, we spoke about histamines also being correlated with anxiety. Stinging nettles is also helpful for kidneys, so helping to protect the kidneys, as well as some blood pressure regulation as well. So that's another one that we mentioned. When there's anxiety, there's also blood pressure dysregulation. So nettles is also a great one. Now, another modality, I would say this is probably one of my favorite ones to use, is homeopathy. Has anyone heard of homeopathy before? Great. So homeopathy, I would say this one really allows us to a very much more holistic approach and very patient-specific symptoms. And it isn't an approach where we're just looking at just a symptom picture. It's addressing the whole person. And we'll kind of see some examples of that here. So these are the top general remedies associated with anxiety. And again, I'll point out a few that I really love to recommend. So the first one there, I love CalCarb. So CalCarb, that's a homeopathic remedy that's indicated when the patient feels better with a sense of routine, a sense of more of a schedule. Symptoms could definitely get worse when there's a certain change or unpredictability in their everyday routine. Also, GI concerns as well. Pulsatilla, that's a great one. So this one, symptoms can change pretty quickly. This is a patient with anxiety that does better when there's a sense of reassurance. And that reassurance from family members as well as from their loved ones. Lycopodium is another great one. So this one is indicated more for that anticipatory anxiety. So that could be performance anxiety, fears including public speaking. This could also look like social anxiety as well. The lycopodium also has an affinity for the GI system. So again, from one of our other slides, the gut microbiome and anxiety kind of go hand in hand. So with lycopodium, this is also indicated when that nervous stomach, so loose stools when we're feeling anxious. And then it could also be the other way around where we're also having constipation. And then aconite, that's another one I really like to recommend. So that one is indicated when there's that severe sense of panic, more of a panic attack presentation, and also extreme fears. Now, we can't forget about exercise. So exercise is a great way to support anxiety. And I usually tell my patients, find something that you enjoy. It could be an enjoyable form of exercise for yourself. So these are a few examples here. Walking does a great deal for us. And whatever's in the asterisk here is also what Dr. Leah shared about in regard to heart rate variability. So it supports that as well. High intensity interval training, that could, again, with exercise, one size does not fit all. So it's kind of finding what really helps you and what works with you. Stretching, using weights, qigong is also a great one. And we can't forget about dance. So again, going back to finding what you really enjoy. So if you enjoy dancing, I'll tell my patient, put on a YouTube song or put on music and just dance. Dance for like 30 minutes. And that alone could be really helpful for anxiety. All right. Well, thank you all so much for listening. And right now, we'll be taking any questions that you may have.
Hi.
Yes, I can definitely do that. Right. And I'll speak a little. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so there's definitely different variations of the tapping, but I found this way to kind of be most helpful. So the first one is always going to be this karate chop here, right? Yes. And then the second one is the top of our head. And then the next one is the center of the eyebrows, and that could be any side of the face. And then it's the end of the eyebrow, under the eye, and then under the nose, right here under the lips here, yes. Collarbone. And then it's right under here. So kind of a hands with below the armpit area. And then that's considered one round. So then you basically repeat that. Right. I mean, even sometimes, even just doing this, just doing like one little tapping could be really helpful.
The way I like to think of it is also you're kind of working down the body when you first start. So you're here, and then you kind of go to the top, and you just kind of work down. It's kind of forgiving, like you said. If you forget what to do, it's still going to help in some capacity. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear it. I love that one. It's my favorite. I definitely use it a lot myself. And a lot of kids do really well. Like even some of our kids that have seizures, they can emotionally get upset, and we can do that with them, and they calm down quite a bit. But I would say that's the most effective that I've found for someone really quick. If you only have like a minute and a half, you could do 5 breaths and come back, and you could be like, hey, I got to go to the bathroom. You go in the bathroom, you do your breathing, and come back out, you're like a different person. Oh, I'm so glad.
You got another. Right here.
Hi.
Oh, stinging nettles. Nettles, yes. And that's an herb.
It's Nettles. Hi.
Commented that like iron can be both good or bad for you. I had a doctor once tell me that taking too much vitamin C, it just went through you.
Mm-hmm.
Just goes through you. But you don't overdose from vitamins. So like, the harm in taking vitamins to me is better than harm in other
Mm-hmm. It's a great question to kind of bring up or comment. Yeah, like some people, they can load iron, and we don't want that because that can hurt their heart and their liver, and that's usually a genetic thing that is going on. But then there's some people who, like, if they're having AFib, they may be iron deficient, right? And we don't want them having more AFib or having a heart issue. But I think what we try to do is be really personalized, because there are some people who really need more nutrients, and they're losing a lot of muscle mass, later in their life. But then there are other times that we don't. Like I had a patient the other day, and her vitamin D was 98. I was like, stop it right now. This is too high, because that can also cause issues. So usually for most people, this is kind of general. It's not really giving advice, but just sharing what we do for our folks is we have them usually pulse some of if we have them on a vitamin regimen, like a multivitamin or something like that, I usually pulse it, meaning maybe 2 or 3 times a week versus every single day. But again, that's more for a general population. Again, like I don't know everything that's going on for everybody, but in general terms, it's hard for vitamin C. It is water soluble, so it's going to go right through you. So it's not going to load like a vitamin D, like I just talked about. So it's a lot safer. Vitamin C, you can eat like 5 strawberries and you already have your vitamin C for the day. So it's an easier one to get than some of the others. Yeah. Hi.
Back to the herbal things. What was the next to the last one? It wasn't the stinging needle.
What was that one?
Is it this slide?
Is it that?
No.
Oh, this one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Lemon balm and passion flower.
They were what?
Yeah, so lemon balm both of them are anti-anxiety. So lemon balm is also a nice one that relaxes our nervous system. It also helps to regulate the thyroid. So the thyroid could be associated with anxiety. Passion flower, I love that one. When I think of passion flower, I do mostly think about insomnia. So kind of when you're laying in bed at night and your mind is just going, restless mind. Passion flower could be helpful for that. Any other questions?
Just wait. Let them finish.
Yes. The homeopathics.
Oh, I see. Okay. Is it, sorry.
Is
this
this one?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so these are just few of homeopathic remedies that we use specifically for anxiety, but then with homeopathics, it's also a whole person approach. So it could be used for anxiety as well as GI concerns, um, sleeping issues, severe panic. So these are just several homeopathics that we use.
Yeah. We wouldn't expect you to know, but you might see it out
Right.
there. Like probably the most common one on there that you'll see maybe in like stores and things like that would be CalCarb. We use it a lot with like CalCarb is a big one that is used for kids with anxiety.
Yes.
But I would say like in general terms, we just kind of put it up there in case you've heard of it. And I would say if you're gonna, we kind of put a few references at the bottom. Like if you really want to know more about it, obviously find someone who's trained in homeopathy. But there are 2 books that are listed there that are really great. There's one for kids, and then there's also a general one called the Morrison Desktop Companion, which is kind of an interesting one. Yeah.
Oh, gelsemium. Yes, GELSEMIUM.
It's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, on that one that is right here, the brain chemicals, magnesium is needed in a couple places on here in order for us to like be able to make energy and also sleep. And then also going back to this slide, it has a bunch of magnesium on here. So and magnesium and vitamin C both feed the adrenals. So if we have irregular cortisol patterns, we have to be able to feed the adrenals protein. It needs appropriate sugar, vitamin C, and also magnesium is another thing. So. It's a great question. So some people, one that's really common now is called like magnesium glycinate. You'll probably see that. That's the one that we use a lot for folks that are needing more support for anxiousness or for sleep. It's very gentle on the GI system, whereas some magnesiums like citrate and can really cause you to go to the bathroom very quickly. And it's kind of more, but we also like kind of a complex where it might have a citrate in there with a malate, maybe a little oxalate, and then it also has the glycinated form. And we kind of like that one the best. Yeah.
Can I ask what food?
Mag-
What food has magnesium?
Oh, yeah, a lot of different ones. So a lot of your nuts and seeds have magnesium in it. A fair amount of your green leafy vegetables will have magnesium in it as well. So usually if you are getting those nuts and seeds, and you'll probably get a fair amount of magnesium. But I will say, the problem is about magnesium is a lot of our food has been overcropped on many different lands, and so we're not getting the same magnesium content that we did maybe 50 years ago. And so that's why I think with our lifestyles of the fast and furious, we're needing a lot more magnesium to feed those adrenals. So, and if the adrenals are using it and there's a lot of anxiety, I would say magnesium is the most common nutrient that we're giving or mineral that we're giving to most of our people for anxiety. Yeah.
You mentioned magnesium for sleep. According to my Fitbit, I never get enough REM or deep sleep. Does that help with that, or is there something else that would target those specific things?
Yeah. So when it comes to like deep sleep and REM, we may have to look at some other things. Sometimes we have to really look at the blue lights before bedtime. That was one thing I didn't quite say in here, but the natural light can really help with that. So sometimes what we want to do is look at melatonin. If you're making enough melatonin at night, we would want to look at some of those other nutrients like iron, and magnesium might be one of those that could help some people. In my experience, and again, I would have someone check with your folks in your healthcare team, but passion flower is one of my favorites for that.
I was going to say passion flower, yes.
Yeah, I would say that's the one that's purple right there. It's beautiful. It's almost hypnotic. You can imagine if you looked at it too long, you might fall asleep. And so sometimes that can really help with some of not just the REM, but also the deep sleep. But we might, for some folks, we have to be much more person specific and kind of investigate that. But I would say magnesium is a really safe one that you can usually do, again, for probably 95% of the population. Magnesium, 90 to 95% of people, magnesium is pretty safe. Yes.
My question was Is there a hazard of having too much protein? And is there a resource for customizing how much protein each person should have based on sex and body weight?
Right, right. So you bring up a good point. So each person is so different, and so we do have some people that have to be careful with their protein, and that's usually folks that have kidney disease. So if you may see this on your labs. If you've ever seen EGFR or GFR, that's your glomerular filtration rate. And so we want to look at that in something called your creatinine and also your BUN. And for some of those people that have irregularities in their kidney function, we want to be cautious with how much protein they're getting in. And so probably one of the best things that we do is we try to break it down. There are different resources based upon age and then also your gender. And so, men are going to need a certain amount, and women are going to need a little bit more around like perimenopause into menopause because of just trying to balance those hormones so they don't have so many side effects. But the Linus Pauling Institute through the Oregon State University is a really great resource that you can go to related to protein. And it can calculate what your weight is and what you can do, and if you have any other issues that are there. So that's a nice option. Any that you've thought of too?
Yeah, and the other thing I would like to add too is that with protein, that's one I definitely like to recommend prioritizing in the morning. So with that, the cortisol curve that Dr. Leah shared with us, so starting out your day with a good amount of protein, so again, that's patient specific, depending on the dose that they need. That's going to help with stabilizing their blood sugar and their cortisol, since those go hand in hand. So that's kind of where the time I emphasize protein.
Yeah, and it's called if you just type in the Linus Pauling Institute, it'll take you there, and you can look at, they have every nutrient and vitamin you want to learn about, which is pretty beautiful. One thing that I'll also mention is most of our folks that are over age 60, 65 years old, the most two common things that are low for them are going to be iron and protein. So those are kind of the biggest ones that we want to, again, just like kids, kids can have anemia too. We want to also look at that. We want to make sure that they're getting enough. But I find that the two, like early in life and then later in life, that's really where we want to, they're very similar as far as their nutrients in some ways of what we want to be mindful of.
I have high creatinine, and I do see a kidney doctor. Did I understand you correctly that a lot of protein creates creatinine?
What happens is that when we take in a lot of protein, it can be hard on the kidney to function. It can make it a little bit more challenging. So it doesn't mean that we don't do protein. We need it. We just want to make sure we're getting the right amount. What we've been finding in the research most recently around kidney disease is actually the microbiome. That there's certain flora growing in our gut that can affect even kidney disease. It's fascinating. We used to never think of that, but this is the newest research is that, and they actually have specific probiotics for folks with kidney disease now, and I've been seeing remarkable results where I've got people coming down from like 1.6 to like 1.2. I mean, now they're in normal range, whereas they were in like grade 4 kidney disease, or in some people 5. Yeah. So usually the kidney doctors can help. Some of the nutritionists can help as well, but basically we want to just, and phosphorus is the other thing. Phosphorus is in a lot of different foods, but that's the one marker that a lot of kidney doctors they don't test. Now, they do later on when it's grade 4 and 5, but we really should be looking at phosphorus. If we can get some of those phosphorus foods down in the diet, our BUN and creatinine can also improve. It's pretty cool.
And I have a comment about passion flower.
Yeah.
I've got it all over my house. I can't get rid of it.
Oh,
So we're coming to your house.
Yeah.
Well, I guess you guys know what you're doing at church next week. I love it. Well, we've probably taken more time than we probably had. But is there anybody who has anything else? Well, it was really lovely being with you all.
Thank
Thank
you all
you.
so much. Yes.
Oh, thank you so much.
You have a sheet coming back that will have some different exercises on it related to breathing. The Bible says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. And we were designed in such a way that we're connected within. So that's why we're doing one night on body, one night on mind, and one night on spirit. The great thing about being connected is we can tap in. Now, here's one that's not on your sheet of paper, okay? This is one of the quickest ways to get your body some oxygen and to tap in to your parasympathetic. Is a yawn to the right and a yawn to the left. Do that just one time. One time. You've got more oxygen available to you in just that quick little exercise. And you've tapped into something by breathing. On your sheet of paper that has this with the breathing exercise. Oh, I didn't. Here you go. Breathing with your belly or abdominal breathing is a great way to get extra oxygen, which just means all you do in belly breathing is drop the diaphragm. We all have this muscle in here called a diaphragm, right? Like this. When I breathe, with my belly, I'm getting more oxygen. I'm tapping in to what my body needs. You'll see on there where it talks about paced breathing. That's actually what you were teaching earlier, is just this paced breathing. If you have an iPhone or an Android, you can get this free app called Paced Breathing, and it simply has a diagram where you breathe in and you pause, and then you breathe out. And you watch the little ball go up, and you watch it go across, and you watch it come down. It's getting that breathing under control. We don't think about our breathing. We really don't. Well, the more lung issues you have, the more you think about your breathing. Typically, most of us go along and we don't think about our breathing. The vast majority of people spend all their time shallow breathing. You don't hardly fill up your lungs. You're making everything work harder. Getting into the habit of some belly breaths, some paced breathing on the back side. This is the one that she said was too hard. For some. The best thing is, whatever type you're doing, find out, because everybody's breathing is a little bit different. So it's my breathing in for a 4-second count. I can do it. Some people can't. They need a 3. Well, if you can breathe in for 3 seconds. So look at the top of your sheet. You breathe in for 4, you hold for 4, you breathe out for 4, and then you hold for 4. So you breathe in and you hold full, you breathe out and hold empty. You do this for a few breaths. And this is a wonderful hack. Everybody knows about hacks today, right? Everybody knows about hacks? This is a great way to hack into that parasympathetic system, which is doing stuff in the background. They were real scientific about it. It's running in the background, and when you have anxiety, it's running you. It's gotten running on its own. With the GI tract, it's all of it. All of that stuff up there was connected. Everything up there they were talking about is connected. Wouldn't it be great if we could just disconnect some stuff? No. But by being able to breathe, because I have control over that, right? I can do that. I have control. I can stop and I can breathe. You said run off to the bathroom for a minute. Excuse me, I got to go to the bathroom. You can step out of a room, you can do whatever you need to do and go take a chance to breathe. One of the things that we have done for centuries within the church is to connect prayer and breathing. When we connect prayer and breathing, we're doing 2 of the things that you talked about. And we're putting them together. So I've taught a couple of times on breath prayer. You want to tell them what difference breath prayer makes? You can just sit or you can stand, either one.
Well, 2 things. I was getting ready for surgery, and I was very anxious. And I remembered that Pastor John talked about breath prayers and connecting it with a particular scripture. And the scripture was, "Be still and know that I am God." So I took a breath, and on the out breath, it was, "Be still and know." And the in breath was that I am God. And immediately, previous to that, I was shaking. My body was reacting to my stress, and it immediately stopped. And it very clearly worked. And then another time he had said that scientifically it's been connected, breathing, with lowering your blood pressure. And I've had issues with my blood pressure for quite a while. And so I decided, okay, this time when I take my blood pressure, I'm going to do the breath prayers ahead of time and see what happens. And my blood pressure has lowered incredibly just from being aware of breathing and the prayer combined with it, and it is very effective. Very effective.
Amen.
Praise God.
Amen. Thank you. These are just examples, okay? Like with the breath prayer. It's as simple as breathing, and as you breathe, you think the first half of the scripture, "Be still and know," and then you breathe second half of your breath, that I am God. You can get, you can do, if you're not a Jesus follower, you can do positive affirmations the same way. Okay? But each one, like I said, each one of these things, we wanted to bring this information to you. We wanted to try to provide some real things that you can do. They don't know it, but, I've used homeopathic medicines for years. We don't call them meds, but anyway, because at the store you can buy Highlands, and I used Calms, and then my kids grew up with Rescue Remedy, which was a homeopathic liquid that we put underneath. When one of them, got hurt or was crying or upset, we give them Rescue Remedy, and they would calm down. So some of this stuff is more mainstream than you think. Some of it could be helpful for you or someone that you know. So they've got information. They've got the QR code for the presentation. They've got stuff out there on the table. If you'd like an extra one of these to take to somebody, please, take these, take the information to the folks you think that you might be able to help. Are there any other questions before we close out tonight?
Keep the QR code up.
Yes, we'll keep the QR code up. Don't kill the QR code, Phil. Yes, okay, so it's that QR code, it's the same QR code? Okay, so it's out on the table also.
So we're naturopathic doctors, and in the state of Virginia, they haven't licensed us like they have in other states. So it's about 25%, I would say 25 states have licensed. The closest place is DC. So because of that, it is out of pocket. However, health savings and flexible spending accounts, they will reimburse patients for, and so we sometimes have to write a letter or whatever. But anyway, I know it's not the most ideal situation, but it's kind of where we are with the legislative process. We've been trying to get licensed for over 25 years, but it's a little dodgy over there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You tap that,
Yeah.
then you'll go to the next page and has a thing downloaded and specifically lists Laurel Hill, so you can download the document. But the QR code doesn't take you directly to the document.
Correct. Yeah, we have like 7 different links there. So we have the tapping on there. We have a couple other things on there for you guys. So we tried to just put we didn't want to just have that. We wanted you guys to have other resources if you needed to go to it. Sorry if I misled you guys on that one. Yes.
They prescribe cultures like in yogurt, but I'm recently aware that cat form, and to me that doesn't make sense. Can they really be activated in cat?
Yeah. It can be more challenging. There's a whole thing. Oh my. There's so much on the microbiome right now. I have a whole class that I teach just on the microbiome at Cincinnati. And so it depends on how they're making it and who's making it. So a lot of times when they say they're live, if you take them to a lab, they're not live. That's the hard part. What they're saying right now is, even in the research right now, is if you're getting at least 3 fermented foods a week, it's counting in that capacity. You might have something you want to add too. I don't know.
Yes, the one thing I was going to add to is research now is there's some probiotics out there that are spore forming. And so the spore forming ones are going to essentially get directly placed into our gut, so it's not going to be degraded or denatured at all through through the digestive tract. So there's more research now that's kind of making it more viable and all of that. Oh yes, the spore forming bacteria. Yes.
Spore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, they can definitely help folks, for sure. I have found, though, that actually the physical act of grounding in nature seems to be better for my people. So sometimes I've had folks that have really bad migraines, and they can do a grounding mat, but for some reason when they ground on the earth, their migraines are much improved. So I think each person's a little bit different, but they can help for sure. Yeah, the research for like the earthing and grounding truly on the earth is about the first time 40 minutes, but some people see improvements within 20 to 40 minutes. And at the very end of the lecture, I have it listed about earthing and grounding, and you can go to that, and it's a really cool article actually about that. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody, you're welcome to come back tomorrow night. About 6 o'clock, we'll have a simple dinner. You're welcome to come and join us. And then tomorrow night, we will have a licensed counselor who will be here talking about the connection with the mind and anxiety. He will also be bringing lots of practical help. So thank you. Do you want to go out, get out so you can be with your table?
This is great. Here's some extra ones. We're going to take a few with us.
Okay. Yeah.